Well, it's an iconic property. You know, when PlayStation first came out, it was so exciting because it took gaming to another level. And Twisted Metal was one of those games that actually propelled gaming to another level when it came out. So, I mean, it won Video Game of the Year. So when I heard about it and read the original draft of the pilot script, I just loved the character. I feel like John Doe is such a you know, a nutball, like a bull in the china shop. Well, we're in 2002 America. The apocalypse has happened and everything has gone to shit. Basically, you have these major cities like Chicago and San Francisco and New York, and you know they've walled off the city, so everybody outside of the city is basically just renegades, you know, raping and pillaging for what they can find. Whereas in the city, you live in this controlled utopian society, you know. So we find ourselves in the middle of a mission from New Chicago to New San Francisco with John Doe and him having to deliver a package much against his will, but at the same time with an amazing opportunity that comes along with it. So that's kind of at the beginning where we are.
I read the scripts. I read all the scripts for season 1 were done before we started shooting, and I read them all. I read them from start to finish in one day. I read them out loud to my husband and my sister, and both of them were like, "This is amazing!" Like, they were losing their minds. And so I knew it was special from reading it, but to read it out loud and to do all the characters and like be reading it to people who I respect their opinions, like, I don't know, it's just, there's something special, you know, about, I think most action sort of does it one way, most comedy kind of does it one way, and to have the two combine when it combines well is really, it's really electric for audiences. I think you see that in movies like Deadpool. I mean, like, you see it in the work that MJ, our showrunner, has created before this. So, like, I don't know, I think it's special. To me, this is a special combination. Quiet is quiet. She is sort of on this journey for revenge. My character meets Thomas Hayden Church's character pretty early on in the pilot, and tragedy ensues, and then revenge needs to take place of pain. And so for Quiet, it's all about revenge. For most of her arc, I would say, is about exacting revenge on the powers that be, whatever those powers are in any given moment. And that can shift and change because the sort of landscape of the show shifts and changes. But yeah, and she doesn't really need to talk most of the time. I think she says quite a bit without having to say a word.
What I like, you know, when you first meet Sweet Tooth, and I think that maybe people who are familiar with the character, you think of him as this just insane clown. What I loved finding through the series were these other layers that he's got. You know, the first time you see Sweet Tooth, he and Anthony Mackie's character kind of are at odds, and he holds Anthony and Stephanie Beatrice sort of hostage. And you think like, oh, this guy's really unhinged. And then there's this breaking point, and you get to kind of see the it's going to sound so actory, but like the sort of the pathos, like what's going on, what drove Sweet Tooth to become who he is. And to me, that's interesting. If he's just crazy and if he's just insane for no reason, that's kind of boring. But when you start to understand and kind of get into, you know, his own, you know, trauma, if you will, that led to him being this insane clown, then you start to get into interesting stuff. And it's great the way that he's really, he surprises you, I think, that with what his reaction is to stuff. You think that he's going to be unhinged, and then he gets moved by things, or he's kind of touched by certain things that people might say to him, and he's very sensitive in ways that are unexpected. I love characters like that because it keeps the audience guessing. 100%. You don't need to know anything about the video game. You don't even need to have ever played a video game. You don't even have to know what a video game is to watch this show, and that's the beauty of it. You know, I think, again, it's like MJ did such a good job of understanding what the DNA of the game sort of tonally and that chaotic nature of, and bringing that into the show. At the same time, creating this story that is just evergreen, you know. This is something that is not, it's not incumbent upon you to understand the characters. You know, you don't need to know who Sweet Tooth is to understand that he's this insane clown who is also at the heart of it really broken because of a history of abuse, you know. Those are things that are that are universal, and you will understand it immediately upon watching the show. And that's the beauty.
You know, I think as a woman, I think people underestimate how many gamers there are that are women, and B, how much women like action. And so I don't know, like if you're curious about the show, I guess, like if you think like I'm not sure that that's really me, I would encourage you to like just like sit down and watch a couple episodes, because I think it's like I said earlier, it's really fun. And like I just think TV's doing a lot of things. It's doing a lot. Sometimes it's doing too much. But I think like TV should be fun, and this show is fucking fun. You watch TV and there's all this like special effects, and like they come in and like make the actors all sweaty. No, all that sweat that you see on Anthony Mackie is real, honey. Like he was dripping sweat. It was like 105 degrees every day in New Orleans when we were shooting that, and it was real sweat. They did not need any glycerin. That is real. It's real. But strangely, he doesn't stink.
You know, as a producer, I really want the audiences to have fun. I really want the audience to look at this show and accept it for what it is and just enjoy the ride. You know, this is such a high velocity, potent, ridiculous show with such high extremes that, you know, the message of it, the love and compassion that John Doe gets to, the understanding and forgiveness that he in quiet gets to. I want the audience to see that and, you know, go along on that ride and accept that for themselves as well.